Bergbower, and Patty Higgins, my co-presenter, is not going to be with us tonight, and she's the school person. I am a community member. So I got the quick down and dirty about all things school, and I did used to work here, so I hope I can cover that information for you. But there was an emergency with another staff person at the very end and needed to be transported, and Patty is taking care of that. So we're going to do the best we can, so you will get your fill of me and food. So let's take a peek at our agenda for tonight. And you don't have an agenda in front of you, but you do have a copy of the PowerPoint. And we'll just continue. And I have a lot of information to get through, and we have to be done at 5:30 because the award ceremony starts, right? At 6:30. Oh, that's not till 6:30, but we're done at 5:30, right? I just show up when they tell me to show up, but they said we're done at 5. But anyway, so I'm going to move fairly quickly, but as I said, I'm informal. So if you have questions or comments and you don't mind being recorded, please ask me, wave at me to get my attention, whatever you need to do, okay? So what makes this transition to high school so important, other than the obvious, that moving on up, what we know from looking at research is the transition from middle school to high school is one of the most critical times for teenagers, and as a result, for you as parents. What we know, and you'll see this a little bit later in the presentation, is that during this time, substance use rates increase dramatically. From 8th grade, and then we actually skip a grade when we do our surveys. We do 8th, 10th, and 12th grade. But the rate changes from 8th to 10th grade, increases about 20% more use. So it's a very critical time where students are experimenting a bit more, maybe being exposed to things they hadn't been exposed to before, getting a little bit more freedom, things like that. So it's very critical as parents that you begin to recognize what things could be helpful during this time to really try to keep your kids on track and your kids' friends on track. Because I still endorse this idea that, to use the cliche term, but it does take a village. When I was a kid, my neighborhood raised me. If I was out doing something I wasn't supposed to do, I was scared that one of my neighbors was going to see me because they would tell my mom and my dad. It's just how it was. And I feel like that's probably our biggest form of prevention. As you, as parents, taking on the responsibility to talk to other parents and just give feedback about what you're seeing. It's not tattling. Just say, hey, I was out the other night, I was running up to bushes to grab something, and I saw your daughter in the parking lot with a couple of other girls sitting on the back of the car. Just thought you should know. It's up to that parent then what they want to do with it, but that's good information, good feedback for people to have. So what we know, students and parents, as I said, are very excited during this time of transition, but there are lots of worries. Lots of things that are scary. And a lot of times the students have a lot of questions, and you as parents say, what am I going to do? How can I help support my child during this time? So how many of you here, is this your first experience with high school coming up? Okay, most of you. All right. I haven't had the high school experience for my children yet. My daughter's in 6th grade, my son's in 4th. But working here, I got a pretty full-blown experience. But what we wanted to know, to share with you tonight, was what were the real fears that students had? What were their worries? But we also wanted to know what were their wishes. What did they wish they knew before they started high school? And what did they wish their parents knew? So we talked to students and we collected information. And these are Pinckney's community high school students. Pinckney Community High School, and then what I did is I found some national data just to see where we compared. So that's over here from kidshealth.org, but I'll tell you about this. So we said to the students, both the middle school students moving up and then the high school students currently, so reflecting back, what were your biggest worries? They said, getting lost in the big school, older kids picking on us, peer pressure, especially as it relates to drug use, tests and exams. What's that going to be like? How am I going to handle that? How hard is that work going to be? Are we going to be writing a lot of papers? I just don't know what to expect. And that idea of the new schedule, of having to traverse a big building and switching, being not with the same core group of kids all of the time, just lots and lots of fears. Well, interestingly enough, a lot of these fears are pretty consistent with what the national sample was telling us. If you bunch kind of the social issues, the getting, the peer pressure and kids talking, that was a bother for them. Extracurricular issues, schoolwork. But what our students didn't tell us that I think is probably an issue for them as well, but they didn't mention appearance issues. I think that's a harder one for students to talk about. There is a lot of worry about what are others going to think of me? What do people dress like? Even though it's their same kids going, they still have these worries and those fears. They've told me that in counseling, but for whatever reason, it did not come up during the focus group. That's probably a peer influence. They'll tell someone in a confidential setting that they're scared about that, but it might be a little harder to share in front of others. But we know 25% of the kids nationally said that was a big deal to them. What did you wish you knew before you got here that you didn't? And a lot of it was about how important the freshman year really is, in the fact that what you learn to do during your freshman year stays with you. The idea of how your work ethic is, I'm giving you the meat of what they shared. In that lots of times if your work ethic and understanding of school your freshman year isn't that great, it carries with you because you feel like you get in such a deep hole that it's really hard to dig your way out. They said they really wish someone would have told them, join a club or a group or do something right out of the gate, because freshman year, as scary as it is and as new as it is the easiest year in high school that you're going to have. So getting involved in learning how to manage school while you're doing social things is really important, because it's part of learning that work ethic and carrying it with you into future years. So encourage them to get involved. They said they really wish they had done that. They also said, don't be afraid to try new things. Step outside that box a little bit. Try some electives or different things that you might not have considered as being something you'd like to do. They also talked about the need to expand that friendship circle, to really consider talking to that person in their class that they'd never met before, to develop new relationships that maybe aren't the neighbor I grew up with the entire time. They also, and I find this from working in the school to be such an important issue, they wish they had known from the beginning that building relationships and communication with teachers is so key. And what they were giving sort of as their real examples for this is they said, teachers get it when you're stressed out and you might not have that paper done or you didn't understand it. If you have a relationship and go to them and say, oh, man, I was so freaked out, Mr. Kroll. I was struggling with this. I thought I had my plan in place, but it didn't work out the way I'd hoped. Then Mr. Kroll might actually say, thank you for coming and talking with me. I'm going to give you an extra day. They said they were so intimidated that lots of times they didn't feel like they could go to teachers. But what they learned is teachers want to talk. They'll come in early and work with you or stay late, but it's up to you to initiate and keep that relationship open from the beginning. They also said they wish they knew how important it was to use Link Crew. How many of you know what Link Crew is? So Link Crew is a huge part of the school's supportive environment, a way to kind of wrap around the incoming freshmen and provide them with mentoring and support from students who are upperclassmen. The school assigns every single incoming freshman a Link Crew person. And they're upper class, they've been trained, and they will work one-on-one with your child to answer any questions or concerns related to school, even some social stuff. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Link Crew when we get to the school resources. But the freshmen, the students we interviewed said, hey, I wish I knew to use them more. So these are things I want you guys to see on this list and start talking with your students about so that they get this information. So in 3 or 4 years, when I say to them, what do you wish you knew? These won't be on their list because they know it. The last one is don't take AP classes, advanced placement classes, unless you're really interested in the subject. We heard that from a lot of students. I didn't have AP classes in the high school I went to, so I'm not even familiar. I went to a really private school with no choices, so this is kind of foreign to me, but it makes sense. They said they felt like they should take these AP classes, but it's so much work, and if it's not interesting, it burns them out. And they wish someone had explained that just getting that credit isn't always the best choice. And so these are the things they wish they knew. You now know them, so you can talk with them about it and share that information. Yeah.
I love this information, and I think I'll definitely share it with my daughter, but she would listen to those students telling her that information before me.
Right.
Do you have a crew that comes in and talks to the kids?
Yes.
At the start?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. When we get to the school resources, there's a whole day that Link Crew's going to do for orientation.
Okay.
Yep, and I'm going to tell you about it, because you're right. And that's why it's real important, I think, even when you share this, to say, these are what other students said. It's still not the same. No. Absolutely not the same. Yep. What students wish their parents knew? They want, believe it or not, look at this first one. They want you. When school first starts and they get all of these, and this is where I'm not an English person, syllabi is the plural. So they get all the syllabi. They want you to sit and review the syllabus from each class with them and explain what the expectations are. I was shocked to hear this. My daughter's in middle school, and they require that I go through the syllabus of each class with her and sign off and send it back in. That's part of the requirement, at least in Howell, for the middle school my daughter attends. Do you guys have to sign off on those for middle school currently?
There's a couple one.
Maybe one or two, and some high school teachers do that as well. Kids obviously are looking for some direction and help from us, even though they're going to be these big independent high school students. That was shocking to me. So they want me to help them understand what's expected. And they also want monitoring. I'm like, what? They want you to be aware of who they're hanging out with. Checking in, knowing, asking questions. They also want you to know that they're going to screw up and that you cannot stop it from happening. As much as you might want to, not going to happen. They want you to let them make mistakes. But interestingly enough, the next one ties right in, which came on the heels of that. Give them that freedom. Let them make the mistakes, but intervene when it looks like it's kind of getting out of control. And of course, they couldn't pinpoint exactly where that's going to be, so this is where you have to use that judgment. But it's sort of this continuum where they want to be able to try some things and have some freedoms, but when you start to see them going under, they want you to step in and say, hey, hey, I'm seeing some things that are a little scary. You need some help? They want you to know freshman year does matter. They said a lot of parents kind of going, oh, it's freshman year, just kind of see how it goes, it's no big deal. But it does matter, and they hate it later on when someone comes back, see, freshman year was a big deal, and you just didn't think it was. Well, Mom and Dad, you didn't really think it was either. So it is a big deal. The other thing they really wanted you to know, sorry, I think that's my phone going on, if you hear it. Most teens don't use drugs. They are sick and tired of people thinking Pinckney is a drug school, that our community is a drug community, and that everybody's doing this. We have worked really, really hard to get a message out that the majority of our students are not using alcohol and drugs. We want kids to know that so that they feel okay and comfortable in their choice not to use. And I'm going to talk more about that campaign and why it's so important a little bit later. But they said, we want our parents to understand this and to know it. They're having fun. So why the importance of this issue of risk and protective factors? Well, what we know from research from a lot of years in a lot of different places is that there are very predictable things that relate to why a person chooses to use substances and why they don't. Reasons potentially why a young person may start using are called risk factors. So the more risk factors somebody has, the more likely they're going to use substances or turn to violence or sex or other types of risky behavior. Okay? There are also protective factors, characteristics, qualities, things that are going on that if you have those in place will actually decrease the likelihood that somebody's going to start using. So we expect there are going to be some risk factors. What we hope is that we can have enough protective factors to outweigh those. And the next slide will show you. So what we know, risk factors are never going to be zero. It's just not possible. What we have control over a ton are the protective factors. And you'll see why on the next slide. These are hard maybe to read. In the handout, they're horrible. I apologize for that. But risk factors kind of come in a lot, and protective factors, in a lot of different areas. What I mean by that is there are things within the individual, personal characteristics that can either be a risk factor or a protective factor. Those are things like somebody's just kind of one of those difficult kids. Their temperament's a little more irritable than most. That can be a risk factor. We might have a kid like that. Does it mean they're going to use drugs? No. They might be more at risk, but it's what else is going on. Okay? So the risk factors that low self-esteem, negative, Nelly kind of idea, the glass is half full, everything I look at tends to be a bit more negative. Those are risk factors. Protective factors, on the other hand, if someone who's a little bit more easygoing, can kind of roll with it, have very strong emotional and social skills, they can manage their emotions and stress quite well, and they tend to be pretty optimistic. Things are good. Mrs. Higgins isn't here. I can do this. No big deal. More time for me to talk. Fine. Another area we look at is family. And there are risk factors that can take place in a family. And people get a little uncomfortable when we talk about some of these things. But what I want you to know again is having some of these risk factors does not automatically give a negative sentence for your child, okay? Because what we talked about here is things like divorce, instability, marital issues, discipline styles that might be more harsh or critical, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, things like that happening in families. This stuff happens in families. It potentially can increase the likelihood that something might happen, but it doesn't mean if there are protective factors or other things in place that that's necessarily going to be a negative outcome. And I think that's really important. We're not judging here. So on the other end of that, the protective factors a lot of times are the opposite. Life events, again, a lot of these things are not of our control, but having a death in the family or trauma happen, those types of events are risk factors. They make it more difficult for that young person potentially to move on. But there are protective factors that we want to have in place as well. One of the biggest things is having a caring adult that they can feel a connection to. Whether it's a grandparent, a parent, a teacher, a school counselor, the link crew leader, any of those types of things, Girl Scout leaders, their track coach. Though the more positive adult connections they have, the better the chance of them thriving and being very successful. Social things, isolation, having limited resources financially are things that are risk factors. Not a lot of support, being discriminated against or rejected. What we want to see is a community that embraces and accepts and takes people under their wing, regardless of disabilities or differences or anything like that. That there are services and supports that are available. And so as a community here in Pinckney, I feel like we do a good job of trying to pull together as a community. We have lots of churches that are very active in helping provide resources and giving back, even if it's not related to the religious end of that. Our churches are very active. And our school community, which is really the thing that pulls together all of our individual communities. When I lived in Pinckney, I always found it so strange. We had so many communities that really identify on their own, like Lakeland and Hamburg and Pinckney, and like our Chamber of Commerce can't just be Pinckney. We have to have all of these. I'm not judging that, but it really took me a long time to figure out what is the thing that connects us. And it really is our youth, and it is our school. And finding that out as I was trying to grow the coalition was huge. If we make it about kids, our community embraces that and comes out. And that's really a great protective factor that our community has. We do care about our kids. So the reason we really bring out risk and protective factors is this understanding that we can work together in a way to really try to give our youth the best chance possible. Because a lot of this stuff is outside of the kids. It's things we can do to help them feel connected and cared for and valued. So what we know is that one of the most important things that our students, our youth, tell us about who has the most impact on them are you guys, parents. Believe it or not, it's not in studies all over the place. We expect who has the most influence over your actions. Everybody thinks, oh, it's their friends, it's peer pressure. Kids say parents. Believe it or not, it's you. So what we did, so you know, everybody has one of these to take home. We put together these rack cards for you as parents to let you know that you matter. And on here, on the back, are some data that I highlighted up here. What we know, and these are our Pinckney kids, 78% of Pinckney High School students who took the Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth survey in 2014, they said if they had a problem, they could go to their parents and get help. 78% of our kids. 83% actually said they enjoy hanging out with a parent. high school kids who want independence, really actually still want their parents. And we know they need you. So what I always talk about is this idea that when our kids are really little, we go to the bus stop and we talk to other parents at the bus stop every single morning. We're hanging out. We know what's going on. Probably sometimes more than we should. But I'm talking to the parents, I'm talking to the kids, I'm asking what they like about school. And sometimes I'm checking in twice a day because I'm there getting them on the bus and I'm there getting them off the bus. I have a lot of interaction and a lot of connection. What fascinates me, and I'm guilty of this, I do it. My daughter gets to middle school. Do I get her on the bus every day? No. Why? Part of it is a natural independence, right? By the time they're in high school, half of them are driving themselves to school, or I'm not getting up that early, or, I don't know. But we just don't have that bus stop mentality. We don't have that sense of connectedness to the parents and the youth. The way that we do when they're little, and we can control a whole heck of a lot of what they're doing. Parenting kids when they're little is busy parenting, but it's a little bit easier because I can control what they watch, what they do, where they go, who they talk to. I got this. When they grow up, I lose control. But at the same time, I choose not to be involved. Part of it's a natural process. I don't want to be that parent. Oh, Mom, nobody else does that. Yeah, they do. You watch. I will call and someone will answer. So what I say is learn to create a new bus stop. Learn to find different ways to connect on a regular basis. I'm going to come back to school resources because I'm going to keep going with my energy, and then we'll come back to that. The important stuff for parents to help you survive this transition, to help you survive parenting teens, and ultimately to help your kids survive and be productive and healthy and successful is, and there, I could list tons and tons, but I put up kind of the important ones, and they encompass a lot of things. But information is power as a parent. Coming here tonight gives you some control and some power because you've learned some things, hopefully, that you didn't know before. It also sends a very powerful message to your student that you took time and energy to come and invest in them. And there are 203 students who RSVP'd for the dinner. We had 28 RSVP for parents. I'm excited. If one's here, I'm excited. But big difference. Communication is so, so important. Communication with your child. And remember, our kids can only pay attention for like this long, so keep your communication brief and to the point. Communication with teachers is welcomed and encouraged, and not once it's a problem. Like trying to keep that communication in the beginning. Hey, I just want to, I'm at open house. I want to get to know you. Hey, how's it going? So it's not all of a sudden you come in at the tail end when the student's already under the water and you're trying to get things going. Communication with teachers, with the school in general, is very important. As I said earlier about creating your own bus stop, communication with other parents and with your kids' friends. Cannot stress enough the importance of knowing the who's, the when's, the where's, the how's, the what's going on about that. It looks like spying, but kids want this. Remember, they told us they want monitoring. So it's a free-for-all. When they're over, they're hanging out, you're right there. Checking in. How's it going? They want it. I also put up my favorite, trust your gut. I get so many phone calls for therapy, where parents say to me, if only I had trusted my gut, Karen. I felt like something was not right 6 months ago. And now my daughter's cutting. And I kind of knew something was up, and what am I going to do? She said, you're doing the right thing, you're getting help. But when you believe something's not right, it's probably not right. Trust it. Someone's saying, what's cutting? What's cutting? It's okay, it's a good question. What is cutting? Cutting or self-harm is a person who is intentionally, literally cutting or inflicting harm on themselves for the purpose often of self-punishment, relief, control, but it is not suicidal behavior. So it's intentional cutting, but non-suicidal behavior. And a small percentage of the population engages in this type of behavior. There are lots of reasons, but we see it in high school. I mean, I dealt with quite a few students when I was here, and in my practice, I deal with quite a few students too. So very good question. Yep. So asking for help, another thing I would say to you, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to call up and say, hey, Mrs. Higgins, I'm a little worried. My son, he used to be really active, and now he's saying he doesn't really want to do any of the sports he used to do or anything, and I'm kind of worried. Can you touch base with him? You don't even have to tell him I called if you want to. Hey, look, it's Mrs. Higgins. See, I saved the school stuff for a reason. But anyways, ask for help. It's an okay thing to do. Even if what you get on the other end of the phone is just reassurance. Just someone saying, wow, sounds like you have things under control right now, but here's some other things to keep in mind. Have clear and consistent expectations, not just up here, but that are communicated to your child, to your children, so they know. Remember, this goes back. They want this, right? They told us they want to understand expectations. They want it. They want it for school. You can be guaranteed they also want it for home. They want to know what you think is okay for them to do and what's not. The final one, be a parent, not a friend. That's a delicate balance. But we know we did some focus groups with parents at one point. This is a hard thing to do, to be able to really parent, but not be that parent. You want your kids to respect you and to like you. But believe it or not, they can respect and like you as a parent, not as the friend. There's a subtle difference there. What we did is we developed this cool parent campaign specifically around underage drinking, because what we know is lots of times the cool parents are the ones who don't have the curfews and that let the kids drink and you don't have to do homework. This is what kids will say. But what we know, the real cool parent really is the one who has limits, who has rules, who doesn't provide the alcohol, and who's on top of things. So we try to really give parents permission to parent. And when you have that new bus stop that you're going to be creating and you're talking with other parents, they will learn what your parenting style is like. And that's giving them permission too, to call and say, hey, my daughter's going to be spending the night at your house. Are you okay with that? Were you aware? What are your rules? You know, because now they know you're a parent that's similar in their parenting style, and they feel okay to call you. We as parents feel a lot of pressure from other parents and from our kids. But the bottom line is our youth want us to be the parent. You heard it from them. They want you to tell them what they need to do and how to do it, and be hard when they need to be hard. You know, you need to be hard on them. They're asking for that. The information piece, I talked about this being videotaped, but I think our video might have died, so we lost that. So we have 2 educational videos already posted on YouTube. These are in your handout, so if you did want to watch them, they're about 13 minutes was one and 15 minutes, but one's entitled Drugs in Livingston County, and one's entitled Navigating Drug Treatment Services, if you were in need of how to do that. But you can watch it on YouTube in the privacy of your own home or in your car when your child is participating in some sporting event or whatever. And it has lots of really valuable information. We're going to continue to post things up there to keep information out. So that's a resource for you as well.